The studio hums with daytime cheer as Colin Farrell walks onto Kelly Clarkson's set, waving with that familiar half-smile that suggests charm mixed with caution. The band hits a lively intro. Kelly stands to greet him, and the audience erupts, thrilled to see an actor known for intensity sitting on such a feel-good couch. Colin jokes about the coffee being too strong. Kelly laughs, and for a moment everything feels perfectly on-brand: light, warm, and safe. Kelly opens with praise, calling Colin's latest project raw, brave, and unforgettable. Colin nods, deflecting compliments with self-deprecating humor, insisting he just showed up and tried not to mess it up. The audience laughs, and the rhythm settles into that cozy daytime groove. Kelly leans back, relaxed, saying she loves interviews where guests keep it real. Colin agrees, though his eyes flick briefly to the camera, as if clocking that phrase. The conversation drifts toward Colin's career arc: early fame, tabloid years, the hard reset. He speaks thoughtfully, choosing words carefully, emphasizing growth and gratitude. Kelly listens attentively, adding affirmations that keep the crowd engaged. It feels like a redemption story told with care. Then Kelly mentions how fans still talk about those wild moments, and the temperature in the room nudges up a notch. Kelly frames the next question playfully, referencing an old headline that's followed Colin for years. She laughs it off, saying people are still curious. Colin smiles, but it's thinner now. He says those days were complicated and that he's proud of who he is today. Kelly nods, but presses gently, asking what finally pushed him to change. The audience leans in, sensing a shift. Colin answers at first, talking about responsibility, fatherhood, and perspective. But Kelly adds, "Some people say you were difficult back then," framing it as something others have said. Colin's jaw tightens. He responds that difficult is often code for someone struggling without support. Kelly says she understands, but asks if he thinks he owes fans clarity. That word "OS" hangs in the air. Colin chuckles once, humorless. He says he doesn't owe anyone his pain, only his work. The audience murmurs in approval, but Kelly keeps the thread alive, saying viewers connect when celebrities open up. Colin replies that connections shouldn't require reopening scars on cue. Kelly's smile falters for a split second before she recovers, joking that therapy couches are expensive anyway. The joke doesn't land. Colin's voice grows firmer as he explains that some stories are his to keep, not content for a segment. Kelly counters that she's not trying to exploit him, just understand the journey. Colin nods, but says understanding doesn't need interrogation. The band stays quiet now, the audience unsure when to laugh. Kelly shifts gears, bringing up another interview where Colin was more candid. She asks why he seems guarded today. Colin looks at her, then at the crowd, and says context matters. So one felt safe then doesn't always feel safe now. Kelly responds that the show is a safe space. Colin raises an eyebrow and says safe spaces don't flash old headlines on screens. The audience reacts audibly. Kelly glances at the monitor behind them, then back at Colin, insisting it's standard production. Colin says standard doesn't mean thoughtful. His accent thickens slightly as his emotions rise. He says he came to talk about the work, not be measured against versions of himself that no longer exist. Kelly leans forward, earnest, saying viewers love honesty. Colin snaps back, not shouting, but sharp, that honesty isn't a performance. The word explodes wouldn't capture the volume, but it captures the intensity now radiating from him. He gestures with his hands, controlled but forceful, explaining how narratives get flattened for daytime consumption. Kelly tries to interrupt with reassurance, but Colin continues, saying actors are often invited to be human only as long as it's entertaining. He says the second boundaries appear, the tone changes. The audience applauds loudly, some standing. Kelly waits for the noise to die down, her expression a mix of surprise and irritation. Kelly says she feels attacked, that she's just doing her job. Colin responds that he respects her job, but he also has Onia to protect his family and his sanity. He says there's a difference between curiosity and entitlement. The word entitlement hits hard, drawing gasps and cheers in equal measure. Kelly's voice tightens as she says this isn't fair. Colin replies that fairness would have been honoring what he said he wouldn't discuss. Kelly looks genuinely confused, saying she wasn't told of any restrictions. Colin says that's a production issue, not his failure. The tension is now unmistakable, thick enough to silence the room. Kelly attempts humor again, suggesting they reset. Colin shakes his head, saying resets only work when both sides listen. He says he's answering questions, just not the ones designed to provoke. Kelly insists no one's provoking him. Colin laughs sharply, saying provocation doesn't always shout up, it nudges. The audience watches like it's a live wire stretched across the stage. Kelly references social media curiosity once more, and that's when Colin's restraint finally cracks. He says social media doesn't get to run his life or this conversation. His voice rises, not wild, but undeniably angry, filling the studio with raw frustration. Colin says he's tired of being packaged as a cautionary tale instead of a working artist. He says growth doesn't erase the past, but it shouldn't chain him to it either. Kelly responds that people look up to his story. Colin fires back that inspiration shouldn't come from forcing someone to bleed on schedule. Kelly's eyes widen. She says she didn't expect this reaction. Colin replies that reactions happen when lines are crossed repeatedly. He points out that he redirected the conversation multiple times. The audience nods, clapping in bursts. Kelly's posture stiffens. She's clearly lost control of the segment. Kelly suggests moving to a game or music break. Colin says that feels dismissive, like smoothing over something real. He says he'd rather be honest than cheerful. Kelly says daytime TV is about joy. Colin counters that joy built on discomfort isn't joy at all. A producer's voice likely buzzes in Kelly's ear. She nods, then looks back at Colin, saying they're running out of time. Colin says that's fine, he's said what he needed to say. Kelly asks if he's okay. Colin replies that he's calm now, but he won't pretend nothing happened. Kelly thanks him for being open. Colin corrects her, saying he was firm, not open. The distinction matters to him. The audience reacts again, sensing they're witnessing a boundary being drawn in real time. Kelly forces a smile, saying she respects his honesty. Colin exhales, shoulders dropping slightly. He says he appreciates the platform, but platforms come with responsibility. He hopes conversations like this can evolve. Kelly nods, though her expression suggests lingering frustration. The warmth from earlier hasn't returned, it's been replaced by something more serious. Kelly attempts a graceful wrap-up, praising Colin's work again. Colin thanks her, genuinely this time, and adds that he hopes the audience understands where he's coming from. Applause swells, louder than expected, signaling that many do. Kelly stands, clapping too, though the energy is conflicted. As the camera pulls back, Colin gives a brief wave, his face composed but tired. The band plays a transition tune that feels oddly upbeat after such intensity. Kelly turns to the camera, promising more after the break, her voice bright but eyes still processing what just unfolded. Backstage, staff buzz with nervous energy, replaying the exchange in whispers. Some praise Colin's honesty, others worry about headlines. The clip is already destined for social media, where explodes will become the chosen word, even though what happened was more controlled than chaotic. Online, viewers debate immediately. Some call Colin brave for shutting down intrusive questioning. Others accuse him of overreacting on a friendly show. The same few minutes generate thousands of interpretations, each shaped by personal expectations of celebrities and hosts. Kelly's team prepares a neutral statement emphasizing respect and dialogue. Colin's camp opts for silence, letting the moment speak for itself. The contrast only fuels speculation. In the absence of clarification, people project motives, emotions, and blame freely. Entertainment commentators frame it as a clash of formats, long-form vulnerability versus quick-hit daytime TV. They note how easily tone can shift when authenticity collides with production beats. Colin's intensity becomes a symbol of guests pushing back against packaged candor. Days later, the moment is still circulating, clipped and reclipped, often without the full context. The quieter parts where Colin explained himself are trimmed away, leaving only flashes of anger. It proves his point in a way words never could. For Colin, the exchange marks another chapter in navigating fame on his own terms. For Kelly, it's a reminder that even well-meaning questions can land hard. Neither is reduced to villain or hero in real life. but online narratives rarely allow that balance. In the end, the heated exchange isn't remembered just for raised voices or sharp words, but for the underlying question it exposes. How much of a person does the public get to claim? Colin Farrell's on-air explosion, controlled though it was, leaves that question echoing long after the studio lights dim. After the break, the show's pacing feels different, like everyone is walking on a floor that might creak. Kelly introduces the next segment with her usual sparkle, but there's a carefulness now, as smiles held a little too long, laughter arriving a little late. The audience follows her lead, clapping when prompted, yet still buzzing about Colin's intensity. The camera never shows the control room, but you can sense the recalibration happening behind the scenes. In the green room, Colin sits with his publicist, breathing steadily, jaw unclenched now that the lights aren't directly on him. Someone offers him water, he nods thanks. He isn't pacing like a man out of control, he's still, focused, and clearly annoyed at how easily the conversation slid into tabloid territory. He mutters that he tried to redirect 3 times. His publicist replies, "You did," and that small confirmation softens his shoulders. A producer steps in carefully, wearing that practiced friendly professional expression. They apologize if anything felt uncomfortable, insisting the questions were meant to be relatable. Colin doesn't explode again. Instead, he says quietly that relatability shouldn't require humiliation. He points out the difference between discussing growth and being asked to audition your pain for strangers. The producer nods too much, like someone agreeing quickly to end the moment. Meanwhile, on social media, the first low-quality audience clip hits the timeline. It's shaky, cropped, missing the lead-up, but it has the punchiest lines. Captions choose sides instantly. Colin destroys Kelly. Kelly crosses the line. Colin is rude. The algorithm spreads the most dramatic phasing because it's clickable. Within an hour, people who never watched the full exchange are arguing like they did. Entertainment accounts start stitching the clip with reaction faces and dramatic music. The edits make Colin look louder than he was, and they make Kelly's follow-up look colder than it felt in the room. Commenters praise Colin for standing up for himself, while others accuse him of being arrogant. The same 30 seconds becomes a Rorschach test for how people view celebrity boundaries. Kelly's team holds a quick hallway meeting between segments. They review what aired, what didn't, and what might be cut for reruns or digital uploads. Someone suggests posting only the safe part of the interview. Another argues that removing the tense moment looks like a cover-up. Kelly, balancing instinct and image, decides on a measured approach. Acknowledge it happened without giving it gasoline. A few hours later, a longer clip appears, a better audio, more context. It shows Colin's frustration building gradually, not out of nowhere. That version shifts some opinions, but not all. People who already chose a side double down. Others quietly revise their takes. The internet rarely rewards changing your mind, so most pretend they never had the earlier opinion at all. Talk show watchers begin comparing this moment to other walk-back incidents. At times hosts pushed too far, times guests snapped, times production choices escalated tension. Commentators note that audiences are more aware now of manipulation, quote graphics, loaded questions, just asking phrasing. Colin's irritation becomes a lightning rod for wider frustration with media formats that say safe space while chasing sharp edges. The next day, paparazzi catch Colin leaving a hotel, and someone shouts a question about Kelly. He ignores it, keeps walking, and gets into the car without performing any reaction. That silence becomes its own headline. Colin refuses to comment, but silence isn't refusal, it's strategy. He's learned that every extra sentence becomes another hook for another story. On Kelly's side, she addresses it briefly on air in a later episode, saying she respects guests' boundaries and never intends harm. She doesn't apologize directly, because direct apologies become admissions online, and admissions become fuel. She keeps it warm, careful, professional. Some viewers appreciate it, others call it too vague. Either way, the topic stays alive. Fans of Colin point out that his whole public narrative is about change, about moving away from chaos. They say his anger wasn't about ego, it was about protecting the life he rebuilt. Fans of Kelly argue she asks similar questions of many guests and usually gets praised for it. Both can be true. And that's what makes the moment so sticky. It's not clean. Industry insiders start whispering about pre-interview agreements. Many talk shows do a pre-chat where topics are suggested or avoided. But those notes don't always reach the host in the same way. Sometimes they're vague, sometimes they're ignored, sometimes they're misunderstood. The public never sees that messy pipeline, so they assume everything is spontaneous. Colin's comment about boundaries hints that something in that pipeline failed. A podcast host frames the incident as the end of forced vulnerability. They argue celebrities are tired of being asked to unpack drama as proof they're authentic. Another podcast argues the opposite, that fame comes with scrutiny and viewers deserve candor. The debate becomes cultural about privacy, labor, and the transactional nature of attention. Colin's anger becomes the symbol because it was visible. As the week goes on, memes appear. Some are playful, using Colin's stern face as a reaction image for everyday boundaries. When your coworker asks you to stay late, others are nastier, painting him as volatile. Colin's team quietly reports the worst ones, but they know they can't stop the wave. You don't beat the internet by wrestling it, you outlast it. When Colin finally speaks, if he speaks, it's likely to be a calm, short statement, something about respect, context, and focusing on the work. Because the real victory isn't winning an argument, it's depriving the cycle of more content. He understands that now more than ever. Even his anger, on that couch, was still measured by a man trying not to be turned into a caricature. Weeks later, another interviewer asks Colin about the Kelly moment. Colin smiles politely and says he loves Kelly, but he doesn't love the machine that makes humans into headlines. He changes the subject to the project. The interviewer tries again, and Colin repeats the pivot. That repetition becomes a new boundaried line. Calm, firm, boring. And boring is the enemy of exploitation. The long-term result is subtle. Future interviews with Colin become more respectful, or at least more cautious. Hosts learn he won't play the old game questions. That doesn't mean he's uncooperative, it means he's specific. He'll talk about craft, growth, present work. He won't relive the past for applause. That clarity forces interviewers to actually prepare better questions. Kelly, too, adapts. She's a seasoned host, not a novice, and seasoned hosts evolve. She might tighten her pre-interview communication, insist on clearer boundaries from producers, and avoid graphics that can feel like receipts. Or she might keep her style and accept the risk. Either way, moments like this shape the invisible rules of talk show culture. For the audience, the incident becomes a mirror. Some people realize they enjoy discomfort when it's someone else's discomfort. That realization is unpleasant, so they reject it. Others accept it and decide they want interviews that uplift rather than extract. Over time, those preferences influence what content gets shared and what doesn't. Slowly, imperfectly, but inevitably. In the end, the heated exchange leaves two truths hanging in the air. Kelly didn't set out to hurt him, and Colin didn't set out to ruin her show. Yet impact doesn't always match intent. What happened was the collision of format and humanity, an actor protecting his rebuilt life and a host chasing the kind of real talk that daytime TV rewards. And that collision, once televised, doesn't disappear, it echoes. Another ripple hits when a respected critic writes that the moment wasn't messy TV, it was an unscripted negotiation of power. In a studio, the host controls the tempo, the questions, the commercial breaks. The guest's only real power is presence and the willingness to withdraw it. Colin didn't walk off, but his tone said, "I can stop playing along." That subtle threat changes the room, because it reminds everyone the show isn't the only thing that matters. A casting director casually mentions in an interview that they admire actors who protect their boundaries. Fans clip that line and attach it to Colin's exchange like evidence of character. Others scoff, saying actors should be media trained enough to handle questions. But handling has become a euphemism for swallowing discomfort. The conversation shifts. Maybe professionalism isn't smiling through disrespect to maybe it's staying grounded while refusing to be pushed. Some viewers rewatch older Kelly interviews, hunting for patterns. They notice how she often uses warmth as a bridge into harder questions, making them feel harmless until they land. It's not malicious, it's a technique. But techniques can backfire when the guest is sensitive to framing. Colin, with his history and the headlines that chased him, Here's the subtext faster than most. What's playful to one guesser can feel like a trap to another. Fans create a side-by-side edit, Colin calmly redirecting, then Kelly looping back. The edit becomes popular because it shows escalation without yelling. It makes the argument feel more logical than emotional. People share it with captions like "watch the pattern." Others counter with their own edits showing Kelly praising him and trying to lighten the mood. Two realities compete. In the middle sits the messy truth. Both people were reacting honestly inside a format that rewards tension. Industry blogs start advising hosts to retire the audience language. They point out how that phase turns a question into a demand, which can trigger defensiveness instantly. Whether Kelly meant it that way or not, the wording mattered. Fans who've never worked in TV suddenly become amateur producers, critiquing question structure like they're in the control room. The audience has become more literate in media mechanics, and that literacy changes the game. Colin's fans begin using the moment as a reminder that recovery and growth aren't performances. They post about sobriety journeys, mental health boundaries, and the exhaustion of being asked to summarize your hardest years for other people's curiosity. These posts aren't about celebrity anymore, they're personal. The clip becomes a doorway for others to say, "Oh, I don't owe you my trauma." And that cultural shift is bigger than the show. A columnist writes that what looked like anger was actually grief for time lost, privacy stolen, and narratives that never fully die. That interpretation resonates with people who've been defined by their worst season. It doesn't excuse sharpness, but it explains it. And explanation is often what audiences truly want, even when they pretend they want drama. When explanation appears, the hunger for spectacle shrinks. Weeks later, Colin appears on a different program and the host keeps it strictly about craft. The interview is smooth, funny, insightful. Viewers comment, "See, he's not difficult." That comparison reframes the earlier exchange as situational rather than personal. It suggests Colin's explosion wasn't unpredictably, he simply reacts strongly when he feels cornered. That's not unique to him, that's human. Kelly's show continues, and ratings don't collapse. Daytime TV is resilient, scandals fade. But behind the curtain, producers remember. They tighten briefings, rethink graphics, and add a step where guests' hard-no topics are confirmed with the host directly. It's a small operational change, invisible to viewers, yet it prevents future blow-ups. Sometimes the biggest outcomes of public moments are private improvements. The clip eventually becomes a shorthand reference. Someone on another show says, "Don't Colin Farrell me," meaning, don't push me into a corner and act surprised when I push back. It's half joke, half warning. That's how culture processes tension by turning it into language people can carry. Colin's boundary becomes portable. And then, quietly, the cycle moves on. Another celebrity has another moment, another clip trends. People forget details but remember feelings. What remains from this exchange is not the exact wording, but the lesson that consent, privacy, and dignity matter even under studio lights. You can be grateful and still say number. You can be polite and still be firm. If there's a moral, it's that interviews are collaborations, not interrogations. When neither side forgets that, the conversation breaks. Kelly wanted real talk. Colin wanted real respect. Those goals can coexist, but only if both sides are aligned on what's fair. The misalignment created the heat. In the final accounting, no one wins a viral argument. The internet hands out trophies made of noise, and noise doesn't last. What lasts is the reputation you build when the noise fades. Colin's reputation after this moment becomes, he's not here to be mined. Kelly's becomes, she can misstep when chasing candor. Both are survivable, but both are instructive. And that's why the clip keeps getting replayed, not because it's the loudest thing on daytime TV, but because it captures a modern tension. Audiences craving authenticity, platforms craving engagement, and humans craving peace. When those cravings collide, somebody's voice gets raised, somebody's smile slips, and a studio that was built for comfort briefly reveals the machinery underneath.